Well, we are here with Joaquin Escobar today, and he is a Chi Gong teacher in Arkansas. And we were just
hmm
talking before the interview about his astrology, and he's a Pisces moon and a double Cancer. So tell us about being a Pisces moon and double Cancer and what's that's like. And welcome to the show, Joaquin.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a great podcast, great vibes, and yeah, I guess straight into the question. Um, it's just basically, I guess, you're very emotional if you're a Cancer. Um, being a double Cancer, you're kind of more reserved than most people, and you're very empathic, I guess you could say. And I'm a triple water sign, so definitely love I guess acting growing up and boxing. So I guess those are kind of like cancery traits. So definitely like a accurate depiction. If you know a Cancer, or like an archetypal Cancer in a sense, you could definitely describe me as one. So
Would you say you're an introvert?
I would definitely say I'm more introverted. I think I am very reserved usually. Meeting new people, it's not as, I guess I'm not as open as other people would be. Definitely, there's other astrology signs that they're very more open to people, meeting new people immediately and being more, I guess, more, you could say, like emotionally trusting. I know I'm usually more reserved. And then once I trust you and kind of catch your vibe and I get you, then I can very much be very open and be kind of more almost Leo-like. Usually with the Cancers I know, or in just Cancers in general, it's like you can be, once you trust the person and once you kind of opened up, there's more of like a almost like a Leo element to you, and you can be very almost like animated in a sense. Usually pretty reserved and quiet, so definitely very introverted.
Yeah, well, when I met you, it was on the eclipse, the recent eclipse here in Texas, and I got a really good feeling from you, and so I
Mm-hmm.
just kept you in the back of my mind, and I thought recently I thought, well, I got to get you on the podcast because I saw that you're teaching Qigong now. Is as an introvert, are you
Yeah.
does that work with teaching Qigong? Are you comfortable teaching people?
Immensely, actually. I think it's kind of from growing up in Los Angeles, learning acting, being also a personal trainer, and then having a good sense of people's emotions and your own emotions completely directly correlates to, I think, teaching, because I have to be receptive how the person's feeling, and I have to be understanding how their movement is, understanding the very subtleties of qigong and body language, and how they're holding tension, how they're moving. All these subtleties correlate to understanding the person. And so definitely as an introvert, it actually, I think, suits me because it's not a active workout in a way. It's a very yin passive workout where, if you could define it as yin and yang terms, right? Like we're not doing high intensity interval training. We're not running a marathon. We're not, kicking a bag. We're not doing all these certain things that are like very intense, right? It's totally more about cultivating and building energy and going within in a sense. So my inner Cancer definitely kind of relates to that, and it's kind of actually where I shine, um, off of just personal experience, where sometimes, talking in front of crowds and talking in front of people, I can be much more reserved. But when you're in that space of being very genuine and being very open with people, and qigong's a very, if you're doing it correctly and if you're doing it with like spiritual cultivation purposes and it's not just a physical exercise, there's going to be a lot of energy moving and a lot of space that needs to be held. And it's going to, the term safe space can kind of been taken and, I guess, corrupted, but it is like, it has to be a very safe space where, um, people have to trust you to kind of adjust them and then their energy adjusts. Um, but yeah, it has to be kind of very much, there has to be a good listener to someone's body language, and I have to reciprocate my knowledge to adjust your body. So in that sense, I think it does suit my sign well, very much so.
Well, it sounds like you're trying to create a space, or you are creating a space as a teacher that's similar to the space that you're in right now out in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think being in nature is the utmost importance thing I think you can do as just a human, right? Especially if you're a spiritual person or someone who's kind of, who you could define as spiritual, or someone who's aware of kind of the greater universe we live in. What you're doing in Qigong is essentially aligning your body to the cosmos, right? So it has a very traditionalist view of you're the microcosm of the greater macrocosm of the universe. And Qigong is just the physical representation of that. And it's just one of the, I guess, types of Taoism where you're doing a physical movement exercise, but it's for the cultivation of your own energy as opposed to a physical exercise. And the whole purpose of it is to be aligned, is to be balanced, and is to be ultimately, grounded, but also to ascend simultaneously. So, and that's what basically nature does to you naturally. When you're out in the forest, when you're out in, drinking natural water, having healthy food, that's going to naturally align your body metaphysically in a sense where if you're in a city having processed food, that is going to hinder a lot of your body's natural hormones, about your body's natural connection to the divine in a sense. And what Qigong's doing is exactly what nature's doing, but in a sense, you're manufacturing it to align your body to have the same effects nature would, just align it through physical action, if that makes sense.
Right. So it's so interesting to me that we as human beings find ourselves out of alignment with nature and with the flow of the cosmos, or the energy of the cosmos, as you put it. And it's like, because the trees are never out of alignment with the cosmos. They're always in alignment, but we somehow find ourselves oftentimes out of alignment, and it's almost really rare to find someone who's in alignment in the entire
Yeah,
world. So it's like, it's so cool that you're
yeah.
you're you're making the decision to bring this ancient tradition to your home area there in Arkansas, and help people to realign with the cosmos, with nature. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean that's my basically major download, and what my soul came down here to really do was, for the spiritual aspect of it, really try to preserve the dying and lost techniques and meditation skills that China has tried so hard to destroy. And I'm talking about, communist China doing this versus traditionalist China. And there's definitely, there's good and bad in every culture for sure. But the eradication of knowledge that we kind of saw with the communist takeover, and the exiling of a lot of the masters and a lot of the skills that were used. And where I'm at is in Arkansas, and it's such a sacred Native American site. In Arkansas, a lot of people don't know this is a very, you could call it, I guess, hidden history or forbidden history or whatever, where, the Native Americans will tell you that this is very sacred land and there was no war here. Um, because it was basically considered too sacred, and it's basically like a peace zone. We have the natural hot springs, and it wasn't seen as like a place you could go to war. It was seen as more so holy land. And to have the honor of introducing this land to Qigong practice is a very high spiritual honor, and is kind of it's a lot to put on, your shoulders in a sense, because what I'm saying is very profound in a sense, because I'm trying to preserve dying out lineages, essentially lineages that are still around but still haven't been colloquialized, as you could say, yoga, where it's not as understood in a macro sense. So to be the cultivator in what I would consider a place that's holy, it's a very deep spiritual responsibility that I know I have to help this area and also the greater world with discovering Qigong, because it's been probably the most pivotal single spiritual, I guess you could find it as, it's not just defined as Qigong, but the greater idea of Taoism. And Taoism not as just the philosophy, but Taoism as spiritual practice, or you could define it loosely as religion, but they're spiritual techniques and spiritual cultivation techniques to help people and to have them be more aligned, like in nature. So yeah, it's a really cool thing that I can help people out. And and teach qigong. It's a very big honor. But I know I have memories of doing this before, so it's kind of familiar in a sense. But it's really cool in this lifetime. I can bring people qigong and help people ground and realign themselves.
Well, I resonate really strongly with Taoism. I would call myself a Taoist, and which, like you say, is not really a religion at all. It's because there's no
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure around it. It's just, are you going to be in the flow of nature or are you not going to be in the flow of nature? And Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching
Yeah.
is so important to me and so important to the world, I think. There's a really good translation, by the way, by Ursula K. Le Guin, who wrote a lot of science fiction stories. She wrote the Earthsea trilogy and some beautiful novels, and she translated the Tao Te Ching, and it's stunning. It's just my favorite translation. And so, if
Mm-hmm.
people want to understand what you're doing, the foundation of what you're doing, one way to understand it is to read the Tao Te Ching, and you can see this incredible
Mm-hmm.
um, delving into what it is, what nature really is, and what our relationship to nature is, and what kind of human we can be when we have these different paths. We have the diverging paths of Confucius, who's all about appearance and prestige, and you got Lao Tzu, who's all about, no, you don't want to take credit. You want to stay low on the radar. You want to be like water and
Mm-hmm.
stay low as you can, and get things done by you lead from behind. Don't lead in front saying I'm the leader, but lead from behind. And it's like
Yeah.
incredible. So I mean, there is a strong, incredibly wise tradition behind Qigong. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, well, the next thing I'd like to have you do, if you can, is the two things. One is to talk about the specific land that you're on right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And then also, the audience that's listening to this right now, I'd like to let you know that we're going to have Joaquin do some qigong for us. So we'll have him teach us in real time, and it'll be a free qigong lesson. It'll be fantastic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, firstly, the land that we're on right now is in Arkansas. It's kind of by hot springs. So the natural hot springs basically around in Arkansas, they've turned them into kind of like hotels and like basically like public bathhouses you can go to. But the original land, they're seen as basically like in a lot of cultures, obviously there's a sense of water and a sense of rebirth and kind of a cleansing that can occur when you're dipping yourself in holy or spiritual waters. And I remember actually, funny first anecdote, when I first actually went into the waters here, I was actually able to hit lotus position. So, like that's where your legs are like this. So when I was able to go into the hot springs for the first time, I noticed there was immediately my hips kind of loosened. They had a pop sound, like if you pop your knuckles, like that kind of sound. There's kind of a pop sound. There's a loosening, and then I was instantly able to hit basically like cross-legged lotus. That was insane for me because I've been trying that since probably 2018. I tried yoga for the first time and I liked it, but qigong always spoke to me more. And I was always fascinated with lotus position, and I was always kind of had a weird subconscious knowing that that is a position that does actually activate some sort of metaphysical mechanism in your body, and it does, in my opinion. And I noticed right when I got into the waters, like I guess like an hour in, because you can go for a long time, that I was able to hit lotus, and that was a very big spiritual thing for me. One, and then not only that, that's a couple miles out into town, but I'm out in the forest right now, and the landowner actually said, who owns this, I guess, land, you could say, he said in dreams he saw that this is a Native American birthing site where mothers would come and give birth here. So that's also a very sacred, special kind of spot. And you can tell just being on this rock that it's a very holy land here. The nature here. And also, if you drive cross country, a lot of places, you won't see that many bugs anymore. And where I'm at, there's too many bugs. It's one of the places where there's just a plethora of bugs, and just the environment you can tell is actually healthy, and it's a very healthy forest. And even if there are sometimes some distant chemtrails, if you see them, there's basically they're basically gone, and the land is basically, I think, kind of too high vibe and sacred that it kind of just, I guess you could say, like, eviscerates any sort of negativity I've noticed. But it also amplifies it, you could say, in some ways. Obviously, and if there's all the crystal quartz here, and if you look on the plate of Arkansas, like the license plate of Arkansas, it's a big diamond. So there's obviously tons of crystals everywhere, and all the mountains, they're fully loaded with quartz crystals. This land is completely stacked with crystals, and even in the lake nearby, there's ancient tellings of, in the early 1800s, they kind of reconstructed it, but there said there was pyramids there. So there's so much probably hidden history that we don't even know about. And just being on this land, this is probably the largest, healthiest land I've seen in a while. Because even Colorado is very, very pretty, but there's parts, and there's, yeah, like the Denver airport over there and stuff. But I mean, obviously Arkansas is not perfect, but it's not a competition of states or anything. But I've been a lot of places, and I got to say that this is probably one of the most holy sites in America for sure. Just off of the natural water you can get. Arkansas, if you look on a map of, if the whole world shut down, there's not that many places you could actually live just off, the water and the food and stuff. But Arkansas is actually one of them because they have so much fresh natural water. So we have so much clean water energy. We have so much healthy crystal quartz energy. And, people are seeing dreams that, Native American women used to come give birth here. It's a lot of good vibes. So, and even just going into the city, it's such a contrast that it's kind of a good reflection on how high vibe a place is, right? Like, if someone would go to Sedona and then they go to New York City, you could tell there's a difference. It's the same kind of thing here. Like, you go to Arkansas, then you can go to Dallas, and you can go, whoa, like there's a huge difference here. So it's a very sacred, sacred special land here.
The side of the family that are the big huggers, the down south cousins who hug each other all the time. They
Mm-hmm.
they live in Little Rock, so I would sometimes go visit them, and I would be driving along, and I'd see these tarantulas slowly going across the road, and I was like, wow, cool. I
Yeah.
love tarantulas. Like, I'm not afraid of tarantulas at all. I have a real kinship with them, even though I'm totally afraid of spiders in general. Those little spiders, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, but a tarantula, I'm like, don't
Yeah.
hit him, let him live. And
Yeah.
but it sounds like, yeah, because you just recently moved to Arkansas, I think, for the environment, for the high crystal vibe there, right? Because I mean, I think these crystals might just be chemtrail busters, chem busters.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I would say, more intelligent people who could definitely have this conversation, but I actually do believe that they are record keepers in some sense, and they are way more, I guess you could put it, like, metaphysically entangled in reality. So we see and perceive only 3D from a certain lens, but there is a macro sense going on where something minute also has a spiritual body to it, and then something, um, it also has a hidden kind of part of its essence that I believe that it sounds far out in a sense, but there's a couple of spiritual people I've talked to, and the fact that they could be record keepers, and then it's a almost like a, like a version of the Library of Alexandria, in a sense, where the codes of the Matrix are kept, in a sense, inside the earth in some way, and it's then encrypted into, like how you would think, like, if this is a matrix, it's like binary code, so it's like encoded into the crystals. And I think that's fully possible. I mean, there's the world's so crazy that I actually do believe that it's almost like a record keeper in a sense, or there's they hold knowledge, they hold connection towards certain people, they speak to certain people, um magnetically almost.
I wanted to call this interview Chi Gong, but I think I might want to call it Crystal Codes, because it's like, that's such a cool idea, man. I just can't even
Yeah,
believe it.
it makes sense if you think that karma's real, and there's equal and opposite reaction constantly going on in the matrix. It would have to be kept somewhere. You either have to have a couple of beliefs in order to deduce what that could actually mean. Um, and someone who totally believes in a sense of karma, you either believe that it's some sort of external body completely constructed. So these are basically just like aliens or some sort of thing that like tallies and determines their own criterion of what a soul should and shouldn't go through, and then reincarnates you and says like, okay, well, this person did all this stuff. They had, and then boom, or this should kind of happen to them. So, or you, and that is actually another topic almost, but you could then also have the idea that the earth itself and it is like a bio connected interlocked thing with you. So whatever happens in a sense is encoded and can be encoded basically in crystals. So yeah, it's a trippy idea, but people I've talked to that I highly trust as psychics do consider Arkansas like a record keeper. They've referred to it as they've pinged and had some words to I guess you could say delineate it as that. So I'm kind of going with it. I trust those psychics, right? There's some I guess you could say seers that I hold in higher regard to their expertise on certain clairvoyance, right? Like I would be a good teacher of teaching them certain physical movements of qigong, but on certain 5D cognitive abilities, I would defer to them. And if they're saying that, then it's not like I'm saying it's 100% true or isn't. I just kind of like I'm kind of going with the trend of them being right.
We have a crystalline earth, this ball that's largely crystalline, and presumably our earth, the Terra, is a library of information. And maybe in Arkansas, you've got yourself just a high vibe place, like you're saying, that so that the record is everywhere on the planet. The planet is the record, and we are also crystalline, and we are also a record. But in where you are right now just happens to be this high vibe place, part of the library, maybe.
Exactly, right. Like everything is light ultimately, and crystals are just a physical rock manifestation of like the record keeper of that light. So I guess you could put it in that sense where you could be a biomagnetic field, or you could just be a rock that has its own cryptid energy into it, or a plant that has its own energy to it, but it's ultimately just light in a sense that's keeping it. So I think that's very true. And again, right, like we don't even know, and there's so many, I guess, theories about the potentiality of an inner earth or inner earth beings, or the actual tunnels or crystals that are actually going on in inner earth. So there's just a myriad of different things that could be going on and actually going on underneath us. And any yeah, I think there definitely is. So there's definitely a array of probably things that are going on. But yeah. So I guess for the qigong lesson that I could start is essentially the rule number one is kind of like what we talked about in the beginning. It's the sense of alignment. And there's a few things that I'll first kind of cover and then just talk, and then I'll start doing the positions and postures. But the key word there actually at the end was posture. And a lot of Qigong is understanding the importance of breath work and the importance of posture. I would say there's certain forms of other cultivation or other systems that have more emphasis on breath work. But I would say that the pivotal defining feature of Qigong is essentially posture, and essentially having the idea of the meridians that you have in your body, them being aligned, and the flow of energy that you naturally have going on in your body to basically be unobstructed. And if you have basically unobstructed energy, it's just a physics principle. So it's not anything abstract in a sense. It's just basically you're like a spinning top, or like something that's wound up, you only have a certain amount of gas in your tank, and you're basically trying to make yourself more metaphysically aerodynamic. So if you're, and I think there's multiple different factors here. Like if you're um, very overweight, there's a physical aspect to this, and I think physicality is a very important thing. Like get your diet locked in, get there, and the food's so toxic, so we're in such a weird, precarious time in a sense where we have poison on all levels. So it's kind of like there's that obviously, but the main feature I would try to convey is essentially having your body. I'll make sure, yeah, there. So having your body completely aligned and having a sense of ease. So not being too rigid or not being too structured, like not having like very bent knees, not that. Or so there's grace and there's levity in your movement. And if you look at any sort of dancer, if you look at like ballet, if you look at what you define as beautiful, there's a sense of fluidity to it. If you look at like a tree moving, it's mimicking that. You're mimicking the sense of fluidity that a ballerina or a tree in the wind would have, or a stream. So if you could then create the copy of that by having fluidity in your own joints and your own organs and containing the breath, and I even have, this is probably my biggest thing, centering your breath and sinking your breath into your body and having diaphragm breathing. So breathing from your gut mostly, but also the postures, having basically an ease and sense of movement, having your legs wider than your hips, some bounce to you, and then having basically, and this is very key in relation to, because I think people can kind of generally understand because your joints and your knees and ankles only go one way. So it's very easy to be straight and then kind of bend. But with your arms, since they have more mobility and more dexterity, essentially, there's a lot of subtlety in just, and I'll do this just so you understand. So with your arm, a lot of people will hold or have a lot of tension in their hands. And that's, I think, one of the most interesting thought experiments when doing Qigong and in seeing how people hold energy, their hands usually have like a more rigid sense to them. So having the ability to have the looseness in the elbow, yet have basically the structure of the bone. So the muscle itself is relaxed. It's not traumatized. Like if someone's very traumatized, they're usually very stressed. And and I believe like why you could say like if you have basically a child do anything from a young age, like play the piano, play a certain sport, there's obviously preconditioning, right? Certain people will be better at certain things. But in a sense, their muscles, in my opinion, aren't as traumatized in a sense. They haven't gone through, the trauma of just life existing. So they haven't gone through the trauma. So their sense of fluidity is still there. Also, just the fact of people sitting in chairs constantly, that makes your hips very rigid. So there's multiple different factors here. But understanding the microcosm of this, which is the fluidity in the arms, because in my opinion, the number one thing you're going to be doing in Qigong is moving the energy within your arms and having and containing the energy and basically kind of like flicking it in a sense. So on one hand, you have to be resonating at a frequency of what you can kind of define as like gratitude or the highest forms of frequency, right? So you're not in like shame or guilt when you're doing this because you'll feel rigid, you'll feel tensed up. If you're feeling that, you're going to have more like see just even saying those words, my hand instantly kind of wanted to kind of like um almost like a witch or like a demon. It almost is like it turns into like a claw more. But if you have the sense of fluidity and gratitude and joy, your natural, just off of the frequency of those words, but the natural chi in your hands are going to be much more fluid. And having the muscle be relaxed is the most important thing. Having the muscle be relaxed is the most important thing, but keeping the structure of the bones and of your posture so that your posture is aligned, your chakras are aligned. So very straight back, very strong structure, but then the muscles themselves are I guess you could say like almost like sinking or melting. They're very fluid. They have very low trauma. I guess if you could kind of put it in those terms. So there's not rigidity to it, where we have basically a relaxed arm and sinking. The energy sinks, and just off of that alone, you can even kind of see it in my veins. The just the amount of power that can be generated off of qigong, and that's actually another thing I've noticed too. Like I guess it's called like viscerity. Like when your veins look kind of like bulging, that's a sense of chi. Or if your hands get very red, that's another sense of chi. And I'll usually see anyone, even you could define as like a normie or like a jabbed person, even in the forest, they'll always have basically like a lot of chi in their hands. Their hands will get kind of red because they're picking up just chi from the natural earth. They're picking up chi from the forest. So if you could be barefoot and if you could be in the forest, it'll only help basically your energy grow. And that's why I'm obviously here. It's just going to be it's an amplified version of what is happening. My body is naturally becoming more aligned by the air, by the trees, by just this natural water here. We have basically all the elements occurring naturally. So there's just a great sense of flow here. Um, so anyway, getting into that, I would say then the one position that's the most important, bar none, is you could call horse stance or wuji is like a Chinese term, but understanding this position alone is the pivotal point. And a guy wrote a whole book on it called Steve Gray, and I consider him basically like a spiritual master, but who's passed on. He's deceased now, but I have, I've had a connection with him and not only resonate with his book, but I have a very deep spiritual connection and know him on a soul level that he is totally right about this. And I'll suggest, to your audience, I'll give like a link to the book. And it's not like a um, affiliate link or anything. Like it's basically just this is like the number one book you could basically get that describes why this is so important. And this is the basically base posture that if you master this and do this for like any amount of time, even 15 minutes, your spiritual chi just your just natural energy is just going to go through the roof. And it's probably one of the faster ways to cultivating energy and reaching the enlightenment experience. So you could say reaching the sense of the destruction of the self in a sense. Then another quick thing, the tongue is kind of placed off on the roof of the mouth. So I'll make sure to have a note of that if this is not being heard or not. The tongue is placed on the roof of the mouth, eyes closed, and it's almost like if you would hug a tree and scoop in. And I'll just show kind of the posture. You can see the subtleties. So here we go.
Great. Thank you, sir.
So that was horse stance. And it's a lot more tiring, I think, than people understand because I'm in pretty good shape and my arms got tired. So cultivating that energy, and especially this is a high vibe place, so it's going to feel even more energy. It's very, very powerful. At the end, just bringing it all back in and bringing it into what's kind of called like your lower dantian, which is basically healing and giving energy to your lower three chakras, because that's the one that in the Taoist system, you kind of go from the base up. So you want to be as grounded as possible. So then, if you're grounded, ascending to the higher realms and having cognitive awareness is basically easier because if you're grounded, the base that is kind of, it actually is the more so the one that's attacked the most and it's harder to kind of get right. Because if you have a really strong solar plexus and sacral and root, it's usually much, much easier actually to ascend because you're so grounded. It's kind of like you have to be grounded to ascend because we're still in 3D. We're still in 3D bodies. So there's definitely that's part of the philosophy. And there's three dantians, so it's basically like your solar plexus, sacral, and it's your heart, and then it's basically your mind, which is like Shen. So you have three dantians, and you're taking the energy at the end, and you're cycling it through each one, and kind of that front channel, and then you're pushing it to your lower dantian, and this is where my belly is. So you're pushing it to that area because if you have a really strong gut, that's basically your second brain, right? Like there's been so many times like your gut reaction is the right thing to do. And having your body being grounded is the number one thing in Taoism. So giving it to your lower dantian usually is almost 100% of the time, unless you're doing some sort of exercise that's specific towards the heart or to the mind, which is referred to as Shen. And you're basically trying to get the psychic abilities in some sense if you're giving it to Shen. But mostly, since this is a physical practice, you're lowering it and you're giving it to your lower dantian.
Well, how important would you say it is to do this, to do Qigong in bare feet?
Um, I would do it in bare feet 100% of the time if you can. There's even neurosurgeons I just saw that are telling athletes to train, like NFL athletes, to train without shoes on just because the muscles in your feet on a physical level alone is so important because the arch support and all the science about having your feet actually connect to the earth and being electromagnetically connected. I'm never going to suggest, oh, don't do Qigong because you can't take off your shoes, but take off your shoes if you're in the forest or in any sort of place that you can do it then. That's actually almost like a, I don't know, rule. You could say like that's almost just like a life rule where almost I think that's actually one of the more, I don't know, I want to call them like the elites or who didn't even do it on purpose, or like society almost didn't even do it on purpose, but it just kind of happened that way because plastic was and rubber are cheaper to make, and then they just created that. So there's a whole science on grounding shoes. So I would always say do it barefoot and do most things barefoot unless you're hiking actually in the forest and you need some actual like foot protection. I'm a big believer in barefoot. It's just obviously, there's glass unfortunately on city streets, or there's tons of rocks and there's sharp rocks when you're hiking. So obviously wear shoes where it's safe, but somewhere like this where it's smooth rock, where it's been smooth from the stream, 100% don't wear shoes.
Well, what about if you wore some natural deerskin moccasins like the Native Americans might have worn?
Of course, actually, I was going to bring like if there's like some shoes that you could be considered like grounding shoes if they're like all leather, or I know even there's like so supposedly like there's like magnetic beads. They're totally fine. So those are exactly like a moccasin, like a true moccasin, or any sort of shoe that actually has actual grounding properties to it, not just a barefoot shoe, but a shoe that actually has grounding properties. Because this is a very metaphysical exercise you're doing. So having a place where you can touch the ground in any way is highly suggested. So yeah, moccasins are totally fine. Any sort of real grounding shoe, like I consider that a real grounding shoe or a real barefoot shoe.
I've been thinking about getting some moccasins because I always feel off balance in regular shoes, but the moccasins are just they're not throwing you off balance, right?
Right. I will say for some hiking, I just wear, just like Hokas because that actually does kind of, it's like, okay, if you're going to be out in certain environments, you kind of do need that shoe. But I would totally, yeah, if there's like a moccasin you can get your hands on, like a real one, if you're feeling the unbalance in regular shoes, it's probably because a sense your feet are basically have worn shoes for a while and have kind of atrophied in some aspects. So your body's just kind of conditioned to just do this, and it's just, oh, I'm going to pick up my foot and come down, and pick up my foot and come down. But if you look at, obviously, that's like if your hand was just meant to do this all day. It's like, no, we have a lot of dexterity and a lot of grip strength and a lot of things we're always doing with our hands, and that's very important. So it's almost like the difference between doing this all day and then actually gripping stuff, and your feet are so important for muscle and mobility. And even in boxing, personal training, the number one thing that actually people don't do that they need to do, it's 100% footwork. Every time I see it when new people are starting, their number one thing is the footwork element of it and the ability to pivot and work the tiny muscles of your feet. So if you're having balance, I guess you could say issues, in a sense, when you're feeling normal shoes, I would 100% go to a very barefoot shoe or go to those natural moccasins where you'll actually be magnetically grounded and then build those muscles back up in your feet. It's a real thing. It's definitely a real thing, having that muscle dexterity, or like being able to pick things up with your toes, like being able to pick up like a stick with your toes and stuff. That's very important. And your feet are still part of your root chakra, right? Like there's little chakras in both of your feet. It's not like in the Taoist system, at least, the idea that your chakras just end at your tailbone. I am not one who holds that belief. I think they go to your knees and they also go to your feet. So you have these extremities that are also controlling the root chakra in a way, and also working the muscle, like just the ability of working out, like working out any muscle. I also do believe has the metaphysical benefits. So it's not like a binary thing where I'm like, oh, just do Qigong. Like I actually would think a lot of people do need to work out. Like they don't need to take, the TRT and go overboard with it. There's a metaphysical nature of it. So having the ability to have your own feet doing like foot exercises or having those barefoot shoes, I think would be very, very probably profound if you're having balance instabilities. But I totally get you. Like any sort of natural shoe, I'm always like, I have a tendency to like bend my feet because it just doesn't feel natural. Like I'm always trying to like ground. So I can very much relate with you on, it doesn't feel natural, but unfortunately all our shoes have like this foam inserts and this foam base on it, and then a rubber outsole on the, like there's a lot of crap in between you and the ground. And all of our shoes are made out of plastic, and everything now modern science is even saying is that's bad for you to wear, right? Like, right, like just the materials are horrible for modern shoes, or modern, like hiking shoes, running shoes. They're very rare or very expensive to find like a natural wood one or leather one.
Well, Joaquin's phone battery died at the exact perfect time, so the universe knew exactly how long to give us. So we didn't go on and on. The universe is like, okay, it's time to stop now. But that was just stopping the Qigong part because we had fulfilled that mission for the universe. Now Joaquin is inside his
Mhm.
Arkansas home, and he is going to give us a little bit of information about medicinal plants and particularly mushrooms.
A lot of my spiritual awakening in the beginning did initially come from the introduction of plant medicines or hallucinogens. I'm actually going to go on a plant medicine retreat. So there's going to be, they offer a multitude of different, I guess you could say, substances and magical mushrooms and stuff like that. But I have taken mushrooms before and had very, you could definitely say, profound, pivotal spiritual moments. And those are probably my go-to favorite substance for people to take, because you can take it at a low dose and still have induced effects from just a low dose. You can still have very positive effects on just a low dose or a high dose. So I think that that's a really good way for people to open up. And I always would think that since you are opening yourself up, you want to be around really high vibe people, doing really high vibe things, being in nature, or doing or being in your home, feeling safe. I think that's probably the number one thing I would suggest if anyone is going to take stuff or taking it with practitioners or professionals in another country. They kind of do this for a living. They have a place, they have a sense of setting the space and setting the tone for you going on your psychedelic journey. And I think that's a very important kind of thing to note too, where you are opening yourself up to multiple different realms in a psychic sense, and having a guide or someone who's very grounded and you trust is very, I think, important too. Or having a sense of community you're going to deal with is very important too. I think that's a very pivotal role in taking any sort of psychedelics and magic mushrooms.
The plant medicine field is obviously really wide. So as far as just medicinal mushrooms that are non-psychedelic, what sort of mushrooms do you take?
I would say lion's mane is probably the one that I've noticed the most benefit from. Lace it with the coffee that you can sometimes get, and I think that kind of dilutes some of the potency and negative effects of just the straight caffeine. Like having mushrooms that actually activate cognitive benefits can help more, and it works more like a tea. I think it works more like a tea because it's not as potent and it's not as taxing on your system as coffee is. Because I know I'm a total coffee drinker, so I know that I love it and it's an addiction, but it's still not the best, I think, for my overall system and my overall just like high intensity system, because you're introducing something to your body to artificially create a focused hyper state. So it's fine. It's just like it's a low dose of cocaine you're really taking. And you got to be honest with yourself that that's what you're really doing when you're taking caffeine. And not that it's like just, oh, it's horrible, whatever, but just know that that's what you're basically doing. You're taking a form of a stimulant that's going to tax your body. So just understand if you're taking that tax, it is kind of like there's pros and cons with it, where sometimes caffeine is exactly what you need for certain situations, but it's definitely can be too much. And I think mushrooms or other teas and stuff like that can be a much more healthier way. Like lion's mane, I've noticed, can be a much more healthy way for people to basically stay focused and have that same attention span and have that same kind of like fixated, I can get stuff done, which caffeine is kind of meant to do, but you're not having that like adrenaline feeling that you can sometimes get from caffeine. I notice when you drink more teas, more lion's mane, more of those just positive, I guess you could say, psychoactive stimulants.
So you mix your lion's mane in with the coffee. Are there any other mushroom powders that you might mix in there, like Cordyceps militaris or something like that?
Yeah, I think some of the coffees I do have like an array of mushrooms. But I've noticed just specifically with lion's mane, like that's the one that every single time I have that with coffee, that's like the one that always is the best one. So I have taken. I know there's tons of different mushrooms. I'm just not as knowledgeable in that field, but I do notice just the physical benefits of it just in life, and having knowing a lot of people who take energy drinks or taking all those sorts of just very intense stimulants, or pre-workouts. It can be too much of a drug. And I've just noticed whenever coffee is usually mixed with mushrooms, you basically don't have that crack cocaine-y kind of feeling, where it's like you're not like that geeked up, jittery kind of feeling. It's much more like, oh, I'm focused. Oh, I can get my stuff done. Okay, I'm done now. And you're not like cracked out, and you don't have this like gunk fall. I've noticed that's the main thing I've noticed. If you take more teas or more plant-based, in a sense, things, than like an artificial creatine or caffeine or stuff like that. Just because caffeine isn't bad, it's just so hyper. If you have it in like, if you just constantly having it, I've noticed it does definitely tax your system. And getting off of it was actually one of my huge kind of spiritual arcs, because my chi or my adrenal system wasn't just constantly fixated on getting that morning like crack feeling.
Yeah.
You're getting that morning rush feeling. So weaning yourself off of it, I think, is really important, and having it in moderation, but supplementing it with other things to kind of mitigate the negativity and kind of not have that big crash, I think is pretty important. And just, working out in life and anything.
Well, do you use plant medicine to help you in your Qi Gong practice?
I do. I would say actually what I'm really on right now is grass-fed beef and raw milk and farm-raised eggs. I think that is the because and I'll admit it doesn't help in a sense spirituality in a sense. Like I have noticed doing vegetarian or not eating at all and fasting, I have better spiritual benefits. It is easier. I want to do this if I ever do like a presentation, when I give a talk or a presentation, I will basically probably not eat or just fast or just eat vegetarian, eat very little food, go on basically celibacy, and then for like a month and a half, and then basically I can basically move objects. I know it sounds crazy, but you basically can move objects if you basically kind of go Jesus and not have food or have very little food and fast or have a vegetarian diet. And you are able to straight up push people. And I've pushed what I would define as normies, people who aren't spiritually aware. Bless you.
Hey,
So it's like,
wait, what did you just say? Because I sneezed in the middle
oh
of your.
yeah, mute out the sound. So like normies, like someone who's not spiritually aware, just like a regular 20-year-old guy, that is like in college who would be like a normie. I would consider a normie. And this is why I use that example because I did that where he was a friend of mine and I did this when I was like 22, I guess. So he's like a little younger than me. And I had enough chi basically built up over a period of time over like a few months. So I could actually push him and he freaked out. And that's when my chi powers were at the highest. But you basically have to enter such a rigid, restricted diet state and meditate all the time. You can't be in society to do that. So my opinion, just for maintaining stability and maintaining health, I'm on building up chi power and building up strength just through grass-fed beef, eggs, and raw milk, which is illegal. But
Wait,
which is
what's
supposedly illegal. You're supposed
what's
to
illegal? What's
the raw
illegal?
milk, like getting raw, like getting milk um,
Pasteurized.
pasteurized.
Yeah,
They it's literally illegal. So and I've noticed that that's basically, in my opinion, that's the best for maintaining actual health, like actual physical. I feel good. I have tons of strength. I have tons of energy. That's the thing you got to do to maintain that health quota for me.
yeah,
But I'll agree with the vegetarians in a sense and say, oh yeah, for spiritual abilities or spiritual clairvoyance, of course, vegetarian or fasting, that is going to make you more spiritual in a sense. You're going to be more clairaudio or clairvoyant, clear everything. Everything's going to be more clear. You can have access to the spiritual realms easier. But for maintaining strength, for maintaining just overall health, quality of life, mental ability in a physical 3D way, grass-fed beef, eggs, milk is for me the key.
right. Well, it's good because there's so much emotion attached to diet. Now you've kind of frozen, your screen is frozen, so I hope you're not talking at the same time and going, why is Jacques talking at the same time? But
Oh yeah.
yeah, your screen froze for a second,
Yeah.
but I get the point, and what I
Yeah.
really love about what you're saying is that you're balancing in the debate between meat and vegetables because it's very emotional for people. They're like, "No, I'm a vegetarian and you're wrong." And the meat eaters are
Yeah.
like, "No, you have to go carnivore." You're like, "Look, if you want this result, go with grass-fed beef and raw milk, and if you want a different result, go with vegetarianism, veganism, and fasting."
Yeah.
So you're saying, look, it's not like we have to say one side is wrong, and because you got Joe Rogan saying you have to eat meat, and Jordan Peterson's just like just eat meat and don't eat vegetables, and it's like, dude,
Yeah.
your specific family genes might work really well with just eating meat, but that doesn't mean that everybody should be doing that, you know?
100%. I totally agree with that. And I think also we have to be also it's relative where we're living in the United States right now. So the problem is fruit here and vegetables here, I think are so poisoned that it's basically inconceivably impossible to get the healthy fruits and vegetables. That's the big problem I see with the vegetarian debate in the US specifically alone. And it is a spiritual, physical debate also. I just think it's almost impossible in the US to get a lot of healthy fruits and vegetables. I think it's really hard going to other countries and then coming here. It's almost like it's just a joke. It's like the if you look at Heinz ketchup in the UK where it's just actually ketchup or it's just actually sorry tomatoes and salt, and then you look at the ketchup here and it's just chemical, 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 chemical,
Yep.
chemical, chemical, and it's like is ketchup bad? No, but it's not that that's the debate is it's about oh is ketchup bad? It's like but no the real debate needs to be that's chemical poison and then that isn't.
Right.
So it's like fruits and vegetables aren't bad, they're just chemical poison here, and I think people can't take that pill and swallow it. They're like I want fruits and vegetables and they just
Yeah.
can't swallow the fact that the stuff we eat here is so toxic
Yeah.
that you basically have to go to a farm that's been here. This is what I do. I go to a farm that's been here since 1840, and the guy's like, "Yeah, it's been in my family." And then they still milk the cows. These are their cows. This is a liver from a cow that was killed. That was killed right over there, not too long ago. This is eggs picked very recently, so it's as clean as you can kind of get, where it's grass fed from a farm, from a family farm, not like a Bill Gates farm, not a Bill Gates bot farm where you're getting,
Right.
right. So it's you're getting it there, and I and again I love fruit. I love being vegetarian for the metaphysical benefits. I never have felt lighter and never have felt better in a sense, but it's not. I have not found the ability or I do not think it's attainable in the US right now. I think maybe I guess if you're by some coast, like if you're in Florida and there's like there's a lot of fruit. If you're in the US, it's not, I just don't think attainable to
It's hard.
get it. I think
Yeah.
it's really hard, right? And yeah, and then also what I said before about the spiritual benefits versus the physical benefits. And I just I just don't think it's possible.
Yeah, the US is under attack in a strong way because, we still have a little bit of freedom here, and the controllers are like, let's poison the free people. That's basically what's going on for people who don't know the larger scale politics. But I found that, there's a store called Natural Grocers here, and they sell only
Yeah.
organic produce. And it's like, so I buy produce from this store and I drive like really far to get to this store. So there
Yeah.
is some, but it's like I feel blessed to be able to, even if it's a long way away, I feel blessed to be able to find any place that's with fruit and vegetables that's not poison, like you say. Now, I
Yeah.
also I also supplement with, I have a bag of organic dried mango slices, that I buy online, and it's like to find these specialty stores, like there's one called Wildly Organic that has great cacao, fermented cacao that's organic. And if you find these organic online stores, you can supplement your fruits and vegetables that way with dried fruits and vegetables. But anyway, raw milk is fantastic. Goat milk, raw pasture-fed goat milk is really good for us because the protein content matches our size of our body, because the goat is the same size as our body is. So for people who are afraid of goat milk, it's like, well, the reason you're afraid of it is because most commercial goat milk companies use grain-fed goats, and they're fed too much barley, and it makes it taste weird. And you're like, oh, that's a goaty milk taste, and it's like, no, it's not goaty, it's barley. So if you get a pasture-fed goat that eating weeds and grass and bushes and whatever it's eating, then you find this the milk tastes amazing. It's almost like it doesn't have any taste at all, and it's like really good for us. And it's a really good breast milk substitute for women who can't breastfeed. Goat milk is perfect for babies. You know, this infant formula is poison. It's scientifically formulated poison. It's just cow's milk and sugar. And the baby spits it up because it's too much protein for a little baby, you know. But raw cow's milk, raw goat milk can both benefit us, and that's why they're cracking down on it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel very blessed to have access to that food. I mean, it's almost like a huge life decision to be almost moved to so that you can actually have access to that sort of food.
Right.
Um, because it is so hard and they are cracking down on us so hard that we're really basically in full civil war right now. No one wants to talk about, hey, so we're just in full on civil war where the US is trying to kill us. So there's kind of that uncomfortable truth that so it's like unironically the best thing you can do is actually be healthy and support farms and support people who are actually trying not to kill us with food and
Yeah.
water, right? And like also like water, and I live in an area where I can actually have access to clean water. Like the idea that we have to pay for water in plastic is just, if you take 2 seconds to think about, other than the conditioning, think about how silly that is. Like you're paying for mineralless water in plastic. And we pay $5 for a Dasani. Like it's crazy. If you think about how funny I mean, it's comedic, but it's like they really have tried, and also too, and I'll also say, like, I've actually had vaccine damage through, I guess, having indoctrinated parents as a kid, and then having tons of vaccine damage through, just through your childhood, through your adolescence, being constantly jabbed. So now I don't even know if nuts were healthy. I don't even know how toxic they are. But even if I get natural, peanuts or any sort of nut now, I'll have an allergic reaction in my throat.
Yeah.
So it's also, there's that factor too, where anyone who's a Zoomer, they've been nuked with so many toxins. The diet debate is actually different because we're just allergic to everything now. Everyone's mutated and unironically autistic, where we are now so conditioned and so allergic to everything that the diet debate is almost also a different debate too, because we have this
Right.
population set that's now been introduced to all these vaccines and all these chemicals through the processed food, through the vaccines, that now it's almost like we're a different human. We're a
Yeah.
different human that you then have to treat diet differently with. So it's not really shocking that a lot of people like myself have a very lot of positive benefits off of grass-fed beef, because that's something that we're not allergic to yet, just
Right.
because you become allergic to everything. I can't really eat nuts. It's like I'm already on a, naturally I had to be on a paleo diet since I was like 15.
Okay.
And because I had basically, I think it's the HPV vaccine. I think that's what I took. I think that's what I took when you're like, oh, you're 15, you need this women's cancer vaccine for some reason. So but then I had horrible reactions. I skipped school for like 2 months because I was sick. The doctors didn't know what was wrong.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. It was still probably one of the most painful experiences of my life,
Yeah.
because you're throwing up everything you eat. I can't eat chicken, actually. That's actually something that I got an allergic reaction to. So I can't eat chicken. I have they do the whole test on your back. So there's so many things. So just my thing is I have my own personal stuff, just because I have had so much vaccine damage that I basically raw milk, eggs,
Yeah.
beef. I'll eat some fruits and vegetables. So I won't get it out entirely, and I don't believe in carnivore completely, but I definitely think it's just so toxic that, and we've been so nuked, my generation, that it's just like
Yeah.
it does. It's not surprising that everyone's just eating beef and eggs because that's the only thing we're not allergic to. So
Right.
yeah,
Well, there's so many young women, mostly women, have been hurt, paralyzed, and killed by the HPV vaccines like Gardasil. I mean, there's endless parental testimonials of their daughters being paralyzed or dying from the Gardasil vaccine, which is, and there's no evidence whatsoever that vaccines prevent disease in the first place. And then they want to give a cervical cancer vaccine to young boys when they're young teens, and it's like,
yeah.
but boys, boys don't have a
See how
cervix.
funny that is.
So it's total
Yeah, let's give a
insanity.
cervical cancer vaccine to
Yeah.
young men. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
So, but for those who don't understand the vaccine allergy connection, the reason that vaccines cause allergies is because, for instance, in the US, they use peanut oil as an adjuvant in the vaccine, and it's injecting it. So your body is getting peanut oil injected into it, and it regards it then as a foreign invader, and it starts to produce chemicals, hormones to destroy this foreign invader because it's been injected past your epidermal layer, you know? So it's the body doesn't understand that if you eat a peanut, your body understands that it's food and it goes, oh, okay, that's fine. But if you just inject peanut oil into somebody, or in the UK, they use sesame seed oil, so they got sesame seed allergies over there.
I also have that actually. I also have
Okay.
that sesame seed oil. I anytime sushi has sesame seed, I'm like, I told you guys I can't eat this. You got to send it back.
Yeah, and that's from the vaccines having the oil just injected into you, and the body then says, "Oh, it's a foreign invader." So from now on, we're going to just try to destroy it. And when the body tries to destroy these substances, it's destroying you. It's hurting you. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what basically happened when I believe I was like 15, 16. Yeah, like 15, I think. Uh 15, 16, somewhere there, somewhere in high school. And yeah, I was horribly sick and it was excruciating. And it was basically an elimination diet or whatever, where you have to basically, okay, what can you eat? Okay, this, okay, this. Like it was so selective on there was practically nothing I could eat. And I had a horrible diet, actually, unfortunately, at the time. But it basically then made me stay away from any form of nuts um, forever now. I will say this is the sad thing. I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So I'll sometimes suffer knowingly this will suck and I'll have an allergic reaction in my throat. But sometimes I'm like, this is too good. I gotta have like a PB&J. But literally, it's so sometimes I'll accept the suffering. I like if there's something with gluten that I know has like glyphosate or whatever in it. Sometimes I'll eat it, but even I'll know I'm like, okay, I kind of feel like crap. But obviously Chi Gong helps and stuff like that. But I notice just literally having a peanut butter sandwich and stuff and all that, it's horrible. So yeah, it's just it's just a bad can of worms where
Yeah.
we've just been injected with all this things. So even if peanuts, we can't even have the debate really on, oh, are nuts healthy or not? Because we've been injected into our bodies. So we're now not even capable of processing it as food. It's a foreign agent that our body has to destroy. So
Well, that's the same thing with gluten and the glyphosate, because what people don't understand who have gluten allergies is that they don't have gluten allergies. They're allergic to the glyphosate that's been sprayed twice on the wheat, once during the growing of the wheat and then once just before harvest. So it's soaked in this really, really, really intense, almost forever chemical. It's not a forever chemical, but it's almost forever in the environment, and it's hard to get out of your body, and so you're just being attacked by so we have the alternative to get organic bread, but most people aren't eating organic bread, so they're eating glyphosate, that's just soaking the bread that they think that they're eating. They're not eating bread, they're eating poisons. And they're like, I have an allergic reaction to gluten. And it's like, how did we suddenly get gluten allergies through all of humanity? And suddenly we got peanut allergies through all of humanity. It's not
yeah,
because we have faulty genes, it's because we're being attacked by really, really evil controllers.
yeah. I mean, the only like debate thing you could say is like, oh, we're just evolving or whatever, and this is just a new gene. But obviously, if you look at the trail of crimes they've left, you can then go, oh, this is, you can deduce that no, they're actually doing this on purpose,
Right.
uh, and creating, and they're a mafia cabal trying to actually poison us.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, to sort of round this up on a positive note, because it's always hard to go to the dark, but we have to speak the truth, and there is darkness and light. So we're going to recognize both. But to end the interview on a positive note, I see in your eyes like that you are like a very tuned in, alert, aware, bright-eyed individual who is completely different from the usual vaccine damaged individual, you know. So you've overcome, you've used your wisdom, your innate sense of like, hey, I'm going to trust my body on this, and I'm going to ask my body what it needs to recover from these injuries and go and my so that my mind can get back to where it was. And you're becoming a Chi Gong teacher in Arkansas,
yeah,
and this is amazing. So like when I first met you, I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. I didn't go, oh, this poor guy who seems to have been injured by vaccines, because you'd recovered by the time I met you, and I was like, wow,
yeah.
this man, I gotta talk to him. So I'm so glad to have talked to you and to have learned so much from you today. And I think that Qigong part of this interview is going to be really, really important for humanity, to watch you sink into the flow of the cosmos and into nature in the creek bed there, I think is so important for us, because we're zooming around trying to get everything done. How do I achieve something? How do I get somebody to like me? Why aren't people that I love loving me?
Yeah.
I have to be different. I have to be this. And then you're just like in the creek going, like, you're just like, this is what we need. We need to settle the fuck down. We need to chill the fuck out and realize that we are part of a greater cosmos. So thank you for bringing this wisdom to us from the ancient past.
Thank you. Thank you. That genuinely that means a lot. And we didn't even get into all of the qigong stuff that we could have. There's so much like um just history and importance that people need to understand and really take into what you're saying, where you're like, really just chill the fuck out. Because if everyone did that, a lot of people would totally have a factory reset, and a lot of people could like click out of the matrix, and then
Mm.
like a spiritual sense, like not like click out of the mate, but like click out into a sense that they would be awakened and really kind of come grounded into their body. And that's what I've been feeling and called to in the greater spiritual community and in people in the population and I guess you could say US in general, where people really do need to get grounded and aligned. And once we kind of have that and have a divine masculine kind of spiritual warrior energy come through, that's going to be beneficial to humanity. And thank you also for saying like that you've seen me go through all the vaccine damage, like you didn't even know all that, and then coming into seeing me healed from that does mean a lot, because it's been a painful years of not eating anything and then finding what's actually healthy and then finding what works. A constant rigor of, okay, this doesn't work, this pull, like a pulley system where I'm like constantly pulling, seeing what works, seeing what happens, and then finally finding kind of a system that works, which is go live in the forest and only eat off a farm. So, and that's the thing too, like I'll eat bread off of the farm I go get my meat from. That bread I don't have any reaction to. I actually think it's good, right? So it's totally um a huge stark difference between like if you went to like Burger King, and then you had the sesame seed buns, you get the sesame seed poison allergy that you get the glyphosate, and then
Yeah.
you get this fake processed meat that the cow horribly suffered in, versus this burger, which would be natural bread, natural, grass-fed beef. It's still going to the slaughterhouse, but it's lived a much more fulfilling, happier life. Um, it's actually there's I mean it's so it's a stark difference, right? And that's a huge I mean yeah so yeah, thank you. And I think this the spirit, actually you said something that was really funny. You said the tarantula, and that's my trigger word. Wherever someone says that, that's like my spiritual index to go bing. So that was like a very interesting little esoteric hint that I got on a spirit journey. And when you said tarantula, I was like, this is good. This is
Awesome, man.
this is awesome. So
Yeah, because they're here in Texas too, and I'm always like, oh my God, he's my friend. I'm always like, I hope that he doesn't get any you know how those wasps come and try to do stuff to the tarantulas that isn't good. I'm not going to go into the details, but there's a specific wasp, and I'm like, I hope the wasp doesn't find this little guy, and I hope he has a good life, and he's just hanging out, just walking real slow, just doing his thing, and you're like, this is cool. I like this spider. You
yeah,
know, I like this guy. Uh,
yeah.
I'm out there doing stonework, and sometimes I'll lift a stone, and there's a tarantula burrow under a big stone, and I'm like, oh, sorry, and I put the stone back, so because I don't want to bother him.
Yeah, let the homie have his little house up in like one of these little crevices.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and I'm so glad to have met you, and I love that time we spent together on the eclipse that day.
yeah,
It was a beautiful time, and we had some plant medicine on that day, and that was really nice. So
yeah,
let's go forward into the future with more understanding about our place in the cosmos. We don't have to be disconnected and alienated from everything, like the Matrix wants us to be. We can be aligned with the cosmos. We can work to do that. The cosmos isn't going to come to us. It's trying to come to us, we need to meet the cosmos. And so get the shoes off of our feet, go into a stream, stand on the rocks like we saw Joaquin doing, and take these postures that are a balanced, relaxed, sinking into the earth kind of feeling, and really feel what it's like to be alive again. So thank you for bringing that to us.
of course. And thank you so much for having me on. And this was really fun. And anyone go find Steve Gray's book on Chi Gong. That's where you'll get a lot of the postures and positions that I would say really help you and kind of elaborate more on horse stance and kind of a deceased master perspective on horse stance and kind of aligning and really was who's a really good book suggestion, I guess, for anyone out there who resonated with Qigong. I'd say go look up Steve Gray's books. I think there's some on Amazon. I don't know if his site's still available, but that's what I would shout out to. So thank you
Great. And
for
it's
having me
good
on.
to have, thank you. And it's good to have your example too, because you can read a book, but then I think a lot of people resonate with just watching someone. And that's what's
Yeah.
probably going to be so good about you teaching it in Arkansas, is that
Mhm.
you're going to have students who are able to watch you in real time and go, oh, and they're only 10 feet from you, so they can see exactly what you're doing with your move,
Yeah.
you know?
No, no, for sure. And I think that's a very important thing, like the video or in person and having that emotional connection in in there too is very important because it's a very vulnerable meditation in a sense too. So you're having that comfortability and that presence there. So thank
Yeah.
you. And yeah, it's definitely the video or in person is very pivotal, I think, for Qigong.
Do you
Same with
want people to be able to find you if they want to take your classes in Arkansas, or should we just put links in the description box?
Yeah, you could just I guess you could just put a link to my Instagram in the description box if you want
Okay.
to you know, take I guess a class from me if you're remote or if I'm doing a workshop. I know I'm probably going to do a workshop either very late October or November. We'll see when this comes out in Arkansas. I'll know I'll be doing workshops and stuff in Arkansas coming up and certain I'll be teaching. It'll be my life goal, so you'll see me around.
Okay. And if people want to, like, if people are in Alaska or Russia or the North Pole, and they want to take some qigong from you, can they do it remotely?
Yeah, for sure. You can do it remote. We could just probably DM me on Instagram and then we could set up like a Zoom session. and then I could go through like the certain postures with you in certain positions and understanding breath work. So yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. That's awesome. So Instagram is where we want to find you basically.
Yeah, that's where I would be most. That's since I'm a Zoomer, that's that's what we it would be the easiest way of communication. Then I can like see your, you're not just oh like, oh, this is this person, oh, this, you can set, it's a more like personal, I feel like, platform. Obviously, like you
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
who it is, like who I am, who that person is. It's like a Facebook, but it's also just, I like the template. It's a visual template. So
I totally agree. I feel like it's the most friendly, and you can vet each other, and it's not it's okay. It's okay to vet somebody because it is a crazy world out there. So I think it's fine. It's not like, oh, we're so suspicious of her. No, it's because it's a crazy world and we just want to see what the energy is and what we're getting into, you know?
yeah, for sure. And yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Like you can really just kind of see someone's energy off their
Yeah,
page or whatever, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really, you get them. And I'm on that app probably the most, so I'll check it the most, right? Like I forget I have a Facebook page, or sometimes I'm busy. I'm like, oh, I forgot to check that email. But usually I'll be just, someone sends me a meme or something, and then I'll check it, and they'll be like, oh, I got a DM of this blank person or something, or you got a DM from this so it's probably easiest, quickest to contact me, I guess you could say.
That's cool. I always love it when you see you'll send me very occasionally, you'll send me some like random information and I'm like, oh, this is cool. But mostly you just post very, very seldom and you'll have a Qigong post or something like that. I'm like, oh, this is good. I really like this because you're not just flooding the internet with endless stuff. You're like, this is the
You
thing
wanted
that,
to say shit.
you
You're
know,
like, shit.
you're like, this is what's important to me. Qigong. Oh, and here's a
Yeah.
picture of a tree. And I'm like, yeah, this is what we need, man.
Yeah. No, it's real though. It's like I'm not there, it's not just like, it can be very spammy and stuff, but no, and I think it's just like a really cool platform. And I think it's actually the least censored, except for Rumble or except for like a
Mm,
Patreon. It's the least big tech, least censored, I
yeah,
think, on my list. That's what I've had the most experience with, talking to just people,
yeah,
that have been censored. That's
yeah,
the one where they have been censored, but sometimes they'll be like, they're the least censored, where YouTube, they'll just get taken off or they'll be
yeah.
completely demonetized or this. Instagram, for some reason, isn't as harsh.
I
So,
agree. I
yeah.
agree. And they did take down my account, Jock William Doubleday, where it was just like I was just talking politics and talking about the bankers, and they're like, "No, we're not having that." And they just shut it down one day. And then, but the good news is I had a backup, Casey Hunter. I've noticed the same thing that on my account, I still talk the same politics. I didn't stop talking,
Yeah.
because we got to get the truth out. But they haven't censored me. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, thanks again for coming. You're amazing.
Thank you
You're
so much, man.
amazing.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here, and thank you.
Thank you. And let's all go into a creek and do some qigong.
For sure.
Okay.